Hey everyone, this is part 2 of our official Frasier Reboot content. For those of you who don't know, please check out this video here, which kind of explains how we got into this kooky situation of applying for writers on the Paramount Plus Frasier Reboot. Spoiler alert, we were ghosted, but we decided that we were going to make lemonade out of the situation and share our story with the world, whether they liked it or not. So what you're about to see is part 2 of our official Frasier Reboot. All of the scripts are available to read and download through our blog listed below. Please check it out and view the scripts exactly as they were submitted to Paramount Plus. Thanks for watching. All right, so when we wrote this episode, the sky was really the limit here. We just wrote it as if everyone or thing was available and willing to be on the show, so we didn't limit our possibilities at all.
Right.
Regarding actors or places or budget. Like, we just told a story, honestly. We're just a couple of star-eyed fans who wrote a return that we thought would do the show justice. So we really wanted the focus of this episode to be on Frasier reuniting with his friends and family. Not so much his son. We did write a lot of stuff for Freddie, actually. That was going to come in way later. But he was never really meant to be like the central focus
Right.
of the show.
Exactly.
At least not yet. When we started writing the show, we kind of realized, like, wow, it's really easy to just, rinse and repeat what Frasier had already gone through before with Martin, and to just kind of Uno reverse that situation with Freddie is now the son, and then Frasier's now the old father, and they're trying to, connect that way. Like, we definitely saw that as an angle, but we never thought that was the intention.
We
right?
chose a different path.
We did. Like, we definitely wanted this to be about Frasier coming back, right? Like, that's the return of Frasier. So again, this is more about Frasier getting back into his groove in Seattle, and how he's reuniting with his immediate family, like his, like Niles and his family, but also with his old friends like Roz, and just kind of like coming into his own and like trying to find his footing, being back in Seattle. So yeah, so here we go. So the title here is definitely a nod to the Thomas Wolfe novel, You Can't Go Home Again. This book is a great read, and it basically personifies what Frasier is experiencing in this episode, which is that, past times can only really be fondly remembered and not so much recreated, right?
Exactly.
So,
very well put.
Thank you. Yeah, so that's what Frasier is going to kind of experience. Unlike George Weber's, who is the character in the novel, Frasier doesn't run away from the discomfort of knowing that things are no longer as they once were and can probably never be again. Instead, Frasier kind of adapts to the change and he leans into the new experiences.
As an opportunity to reconnect with his social circle, and not only just his family, but his peers, his colleagues.
Exactly. So, instead of running away from, and giving up, saying like, oh, it's not like it was, I quit, Frasier is really embracing the change and the newness of his life, whether he likes it or not. So it all starts with Frasier accepting his new position, working for Roz at her TV station. And now it's his first day. So she is, walking him around the studio. She's kind of showing him the ropes. And she's just rocking out like, total executive mode. Like, she has her power suit. She has her heels. She's taking the lead. She is running the show, literally. So, they're walking around. He's getting comfortable in the studio. And that's when they go over and see a pre-taping for Bulldog Briscoe. Again, we really wanted to bring back as much from the original show as we could. So, Frasier is kind of shocked, and he's like, oh my gosh, Bulldog's here. To which, Roz kind of explains, like, yeah, he has his own show. It's called The Doghouse. It's one of our most popular segments, and it's basically the same thing that he did on the radio station. It's now just like a more produced, like, television version of that, of just like sports stats and opinions and stuff. Roz, she gets pulled away, and Bulldog and Frasier then have a moment to say hello to one another. And Frasier asks how he's been. What can I say? The second wife got everything the first wife didn't. Which we actually found out later was a really similar line to a line that was in Sex and the City.
First bitch is getting everything the first bitch didn't.
Then he followed it up with this other great line that we totally wrote that was, but that's not gonna stop the old bulldog from barking. And then, like, a pretty lady walks by, and he's like, "Ooh!" He, like, barks at her, like, really loudly. And then he says this other great line where he's like, I guess some dogs are just meant to wear collars. Am I right, Doc? Then Bulldog, has a serious shift where he gives his condolences, to the loss of his dad. There's like this sweet moment where he's like, oh, thanks for that. And then Bulldog gets called off so he can go start his set when Gil appears. And that's when Gil says hello and is basically like, hey, I heard you're going to be coming back and working here. What a queer family reunion we found ourselves in.
Indeed.
So Gil goes on to congratulate Frasier about his book being on the bestsellers list. They exchange their annoying little quips, and then the set gets quieted so Bulldog's segment can begin. So it gets quiet, Gil leaves, and then Frasier just kind of stands there for a moment watching the Bulldog segment. All right, I'm Bobby Bulldog Briscoe, and you're in the doghouse. Let's get things started.
So, Bulldog, what did you think about the call in that Sonics game last night?
It stinks! It stinks! That call was total BS! That ref should get a frickin' eye exam!
Oh, the dog is off the leash.
They're walking and talking when Frasier kind of casually mentions how he is so surprised to see both Gil and Bulldog working for her. But isn't that kind of the point, though? I mean, we wanted to bring back as many people as we could. We really thought this was a smart way to reunite these characters. And I mean, again, all of these actors are still alive. They're still working. They're still kicking. And
exactly,
there's no reason not to bring them back. And I felt like it's very possible that these people would still be in Seattle and they'd still be working. So we did bring back pretty much everyone. We even brought back Noel. Hi, Roz. Frasier is completely shook that Noel is there. Roz is like, yeah, I felt bad for the guy. Total sympathy hire. So Noel goes on to explain how he wrote this Klingon to English dictionary. He has like millions of subscribers on his Star Trek podcast. And yes, he is still living with his mom.
Congratulations.
All right, so they keep moving, and Frasier is like, wow, I never thought I would be happy to see Noel Shimsky again. Speak for yourself. Roz goes on to explain the whole setup for Frasier's segment. She's like, here's where your dressing room's gonna be. And as she's walking around, you know, she's getting pulled in every direction. You know, people are handing her paperwork. She's just all over the place, just, you know, rocking it. And Frasier kind of steps back. He has like a moment where he kind of realizes and is observing just how important she is and how much multitasking is required of her. So they, you know, finally make their way to Roz's office. Never a dull moment, right? So they make their way to Roz's office. She has this beautiful executive office, and she sits down and then just basically starts steamrolling Frasier about the details of his segment, the scheduling, and her expectations of him. An assistant walks in. She introduces him to Frasier. This is Nicholas. He's going to be your assistant. And Frasier has this cute little awkward smile and wave. You can go now. So Roz basically explains that Nicholas is going to be Frasier's new assistant. He is going to be his gopher here in the studio. He is going to like get the coffee, deliver the scripts, and he's also going to help build and manage Frasier's social media profile and get him like an online presence going.
Yes. So Nicholas was actually our way of, again, honoring not only Frasier but Cheers, the show that Frasier had spun off from, and Nicholas being in honor of Nicholas Colasanto, who played Coach. Ernie was his first name, if I'm not mistaken. And we thought that, again, just like how we had brought the character Johnny in, you know, the youngest son of Daphne and Niles, we did the same with Nicholas. We felt like it would be appropriate to have a newer character sort of embody the spirit of what the previous character had brought, and we named them after the actual actor, Nicholas Colasanto. So as a way to pay homage to that man as well, because he was so incredible on Cheers, and we wanted to bring that same energy and that same character of just this kind of, not necessarily a dingbat, but just this guy who's
just this wholesome, like oblivious character that it's just like, they're so sweet and their heart's in the right place. But the brain just hasn't caught up yet.
Yeah, they miss. It's like
okay,
beautiful.
So yeah,
so that's why we named him Nicholas.
Exactly. And yeah, so Roz goes on to explain that Nicholas is going to be Frasier's assistant. He's gonna like be the gopher to fetch his coffee, deliver his scripts, and help him build like an online presence and like manage his social media, essentially. Frasier then gets kind of pressed. He's like, wait a minute, our segments are scripted? And Roz goes on to explain that, yeah, the whole show is scripted, in fact, and she starts going into detail about his segment. Frasier is obviously uncomfortable about the whole scripted aspect, and he starts explaining his feelings about having to read scripted material and how it's not sitting right with him. As he's kind of explaining everything, Roz is multitasking and she's, rocking her role. But Frasier is, I guess, kind of feeling not heard through her because she's just kind of like, yeah, whatever. He continues to object. He's like, I can't in good conscience do this. This isn't sitting right with me. Sorry about it. But Roz is on her phone. Her intercom's buzzing. She's late for a meeting. Frasier then, goes Karen mode. He gets, some big feelings. And he's like, are you even listening to me? That's when Roz just gets set off. And she stands up and she's like, no, you listen to me. And then Roz goes off and puts Frasier in his place. But she does it in a very powerful, executive mode. She's like, this is my show, and this is how it's going to be. It is not like the old days anymore, honey bear, and I am not your little booth jockey. You are not going to push me around. I'm the one in charge. Do you understand? This is my show, and I need people who are going to do things my way.
Well, your way is about as subtle as a bulldozer.
That's when Frasier goes on to kind of question, what happened to Roz? What has this harsh, cold corporate world done to her? And, he kind of has attitude with her. And he's like, I didn't come up here for this. And she, again, kind of checks him. And she's like, you came up here because I gave you an opportunity. An opportunity that anybody would kill for. And I fought too hard and too long to get where I am today. And I'm going to be damned if I'm going to stand here and have somebody question how I do things on my show. She basically just, I'm not taking it. Reality check. Then she kind of explains very sincerely that, hey, we are friends here. And I saw an opportunity for us to help each other. But if that's going to work, if we are going to help each other, it has to be done this way. And if you don't like it, that's fine. But you have to decide, you either got to play my way or you're not playing at all. And that's basically the situation she lays down. She says, you're an amazing psychiatrist, Frasier, but you still have a whole lot to learn. She goes to leave for her meeting and just kind of reminds Frasier, hey, I'm still willing to work for you because we're friends. But again, I'm going to ask you, what do you want? Goes on to explain that she's leaving for the long weekend and suggests that he takes that time to decide what he's going to do. And then she walks out, and then Frasier is just sitting there, shook. All right, so now Frasier finds himself on the doorstep of Niles' home, and he is dressed for a game of squash. Niles answers the door, but only cracks it open slightly once he realizes it's Frasier, and there's this funny moment where Niles is talking to him with only a section of his face peeking through the door. So Frasier apologizes for showing up unannounced, but he explains, he's just so frustrated with the situation with Roz. He wanted to vent over a game of squash, to which Niles is like, nope, shoos him away, and then slams the door. Frasier is totally perplexed, what the heck? He knocks on the door again, and he's like, Niles, what's going on? To which Niles is like, oh, nothing. Everything's fine. Thank you for stopping by. Don't call us. We'll call you. Bye. And then shuts the door again. Frasier then blocks the door and tells Niles,
Niles, open the door.
no,
Niles, open the door.
I don't want to.
Don't be ridiculous, Niles. Open the door.
Niles refuses to open the door, And then that's when Frasier kind of goes Karen mode again, and he has his little tantrum in the hallway.
Well, isn't this just the cherry on top of my sundae? After 11 years of you showing up unannounced, treating my home as your own personal flop house, this is the thanks I get? To be dismissed like an obnoxious solicitor by my own brother. For heaven's sake, Niles, stop being so melodramatic and open the damn door!
Fine. But don't say I didn't warn you. Niles unlocks the door, revealing his home, and then Frasier kind of obliviously walks in.
I mean, how bad can it really be? Niles! My God!
So here's where Frasier realizes that Niles is an actual parent, and his house is completely in shambles. Everything is cluttered with kids stuff, and little Johnny runs by with a Nerf gun and then just shoots Niles in the face with it. So Niles, basically, from this point, is broken. The former Niles that we all once knew and loved is gone and has been transformed into an exhausted, burnt-out parent who's just been completely overrun by his children. So, we actually thought that this would be a good commentary on just parenthood and what it's actually like to be a parent, and the demands and the impact that that can have on a person constantly being on demand like that.
Exactly.
And yeah, so we thought it would be a really interesting take to have Niles go from being this really, you know, I don't want to say selfish, but self-indulgent. Absolutely. He was like this self-indulgent person to now he has to be selfless all the time because he's a parent, and what that would do to him and how that would change him as a person. So.
Right. Having more responsibilities in life will definitely change an individual, especially someone who did not have as much before.
Right. So Niles, again, is basically just an exhausted parent at this point, and he's trying to keep his cool, basically.
God bless him.
It's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
It most certainly is not fine, Niles. It looks like Lord of the Flies in here. Any moment, I'm expecting to find Lynn and Jody dancing around a pig's head impaled on a stick. Oh my God, you even have rodents!
Frasier comically reacts, and then he grabs like whatever is the closest item to him, which just happens to be like this little plastic baseball bat. And then Frasier comically like struggles and screams while he's trying to kill the rodents that ran by the living room. And that's when Jody runs in screaming like, "No! Don't hurt my ferrets!" Jody comes in to get the ferrets, and she's like, "Come on, guys, let's get Enzo and Moose back in their cage." And we thought this would be a really cute Easter egg because, for those of you who didn't know, the dogs who played Eddie in the original series Frasier were named Moose and Enzo. So we thought it would actually be really cute to bring back pets, but to also give them the names. So we just thought that was a cute little sprinkle. So Jody comes in, she kind of scoops up the ferrets, and she puts them back in her cage. And that's when Frasier is like, "Hey man, where is Daphne in all of this?" Right? Like Frasier is like, "Hey man, this is chaos. Where's your wife in this mess?" And that's when Niles says, you know, "Oh, she's probably off fighting with Lynn somewhere." And that's when Niles has his little eye twitch, his little stress twitch comes in again, and he's like, "It's fine." So Lynn and Daphne then enter the room and they are fighting and they're squabbling and yelling loudly at each other. Daphne then kind of snaps on Niles as soon as she sees him. She instantly harps on him. She's like, "Who told Johnny he could eat his Frostios?" "I'm sorry, dear." "You know he can't have sugar this early in the day." "I'm sorry, dear." Then Daphne just kind of goes into mom mode. She starts like barking orders. She's getting everyone ready. She says hello to Frasier when you hear the door slam in the background. Frasier was like, "Oh, was that Lynn?" And that's when Daphne's like, "Yeah, she went and took the bus without my permission." And now Daphne's all angry because Lynn took off. She, directs that anger towards Niles. And she's like, "It'd be really nice if you could back me up once in a while with Lynn. I'm sick of always having to be the bad guy." And then Niles, just completely apathetic, again, is like, "I'm sorry, dear." So Daphne just is real snarky. She's like, "Yeah, I bet you are." She then, whistles loudly to signal the kids it's time for school. Everyone prepares to leave. Daphne, looks at Niles all snarky. And she's like, "You need to get dressed. You don't want to be late for work." And then she just kind of like storms out at that point without saying goodbye. And that's when Niles just completely, again, apathetic. "I love you too." Like, ouch, right? Then Niles just sits down at the kitchen table. He puts his face in his palm, and then he just is like, ugh, right? He is just a broken man.
Right.
Frasier is, kind of worried. So he, checks in on Niles. He's like, "Are you okay?" Niles is like, "No, I'm not." He's like, "Honestly, Frasier, I'm reaching a point in my life where I don't know how much more of this I can take." Frasier's like, "What's going on? Is it the kids? Is it work? Like, what's going on, man?" And Niles goes on to explain, like, it's everything. It's my life. It's my job. It's losing Dad. I'm just completely overwhelmed with everything, and it's all hitting at once. "I feel like my life has spiraled into an infinite gauntlet of the most soul-crushing and unusual punishment beyond the depths of comprehension."
Yes, Niles, you are a parent.
So Niles continues going on about him and Daphne and saying how they're so busy and they're both working all the time. They don't have any quality time together. It's interfering with their love life. Frasier kind of asks, "Hey, why don't you hire some help, right? Why don't you get like a housekeeper, maybe like a nanny or something?" And that's when Niles kind of snaps and he's like, "Are you kidding me? Like, do you have any idea how much that costs to have help?" To which Frasier, makes a comment like, "I, think it's I find it hard to believe that you can't afford help." And that's where Niles kind of snaps and he's like, "Well, that's easy for you to say. You don't have to pay for insurance premiums, orthodontics, dance lessons, veterinarian visits, and medications for sick ferrets. I swear these little heathens are bleeding me dry. And don't get me started on the college tuition fees. It's not like how it was when me and you were in med school, Frasier. Do you have any idea how much it costs to go to Harvard these days? I mean, my God, who's in charge of these tuition rates? The mafia?" This, we thought, was like a really important commentary because, again, Niles used to be really rich. He used to literally live in a mansion. He was super self-indulgent, super like upper echelon of society, and he now can't afford a housekeeper. And that's a real situation that a lot of people are having to go through in life, especially with like today's economy and just the way that pricing has changed, inflation and real
Right.
estate and just cost of living in general. So we thought that this would be a really honest take on what could happen to a man who was once upon a time very rich, but now has a family of 4 that he has to support on a sole income. So all the luxuries that he was once able to afford himself, he now doesn't have access to anymore.
Exactly.
And how things have changed since he was younger, and how things don't cost the same anymore, and how it's like taking a toll on him. So, we wrote Niles going through this experience as like a social commentary on just like our present economy.
Absolutely.
But we also wanted to do it as a way for Niles and Frasier to be more relatable to the common audience, because there are a lot more people who are struggling. Niles basically checks Frasier and reminds him, like, hey man, cost of living has changed. And it has gotten to the point where Daphne might have to return to the workforce in order for them to just stay afloat. And, he's stressed because of that. And then he kind of casually mentions how Lynn is just such a little hellion lately. To which Frasier, kind of asks, like, well, what's going on with Lynn? Like, the last time I heard, she was such a good academic. She was a really good cellist. Like, I'm kind of surprised to hear that she's being a troublemaker. And that's when Niles is like, I am too. And he goes on to say, like, I'm realizing that the plans that I made for her as a father may not actually come into fruition after all. And he's totally sad about that. And, that's where Frasier kind of steps in and reminds him, like, hey, that's okay. Like, we all have different definitions of what success are. Everybody has, certain things that they want for their children, but ultimately the children have to decide what they want for them, right? Like, we can only hope the best for our children, but it's our children who are going to ultimately define their own happiness.
Right. Exactly. I mean, that's it.
Yeah. So Frasier just kind of, reassures him, like, yeah, it sucks that Lynn, your dreams for Lynn may not pan out, but that's okay, because Lynn, may have her own dreams, right? And, Frasier goes on to say, like, you know what? I can see you're stressed out. I'm going to offer a solution, and I'm going to be the babysitter for the weekend. I'm going to go ahead and send you and Daphne to, like, a local B&B, my treat, and this is going to give me a chance to, like, reconnect with my nieces and nephews, right? He wants to step in and be, like, a good brother. Niles is like, are you sure? Have you met my children? So Frasier insists. So Niles pulls out his phone to call Daphne and share the good news, to which Daphne, you can hear her over the phone. He's like, yeah, Frasier's gonna babysit. Yeah, our kids, for the whole weekend. He looks completely unamused. And then Niles hangs up the phone and he's like, we'd love to. So now Frasier is at Daphne and Niles' place. They are gone for the weekend and he is in full-on babysitter mode. So here we have him cooking dinner. He's wearing Daphne's apron and oven mitts. He's talking on the phone to Niles, and he's just assuring him that everything's okay and everything's going to be fine. He hangs up. He goes into the living room where he finds Jody recording herself doing a TikTok, and she's dancing with Johnny, just being adorable. And Frasier, steps in like, all right, chop, chop. It's time to wash up for dinner. little Johnny kind of jumps up and he's like, I want pizza.
Oh no, little Johnny. There will be no pizza tonight. I've made Uncle Frasier's famous duck à l'orange with a side of chou farci and for dessert creme brulee.
Ew, you cooked a duck? Like the ducks we feed at the pond?
Well, no,
Ugh. I'm not eating a duck, Uncle Frasier. That's just wrong.
Oh no, don't cry, Johnny. It's okay. This duck came from a different pond.
What is wrong with you? So Johnny is hysterically crying, and Jody is trying to console him, and Frasier is just, fumbling, trying to recover. I don't want to eat the duckies.
Pizza, yes, pizza. It's okay, we'll order pizza. Everything's all right, see?
I want pepperoni. Ooh, I want cheesy bread. And then Frasier just completely looks unamused, So that's when Lynn just kind of pops up, bags packed, and she is on her way out. And that's when Frasier steps in and stops her and asks her where she's going. She's like, I'm going out. I'll be back later. Deal with it. Frasier is like, oh, no, you're not, little missy. He's like, I'm in charge of you for the weekend. You are going nowhere, missy. She, gets all pissy when she realizes, she can't just zoom past him, and she storms off to her room and slams the door loudly behind her.
Well, that went well.
We fade in, and now Frasier is standing outside of Lynn's bedroom door, and he's holding the creme brulee. She has music blasting from her bedroom, so he kind of timidly knocks on her door.
Lynn, are you hungry? We've got pizza out here. Lynn?
Frasier kind of gingerly opens the door.
I made creme brulee.
And that's where Frasier has this completely shocked face once he realizes that Lynn is in her bed kissing her best friend, who happens to be a girl. Frasier dramatically screams, and then he kind of stammers back and forth, holding the creme brulee, before he comically sets it down and just runs out of the room, just in a panic. And then we have a nice fade out from here, where he runs away frantically, waving his hands in the air with his oven mitts on. So then we fade in, and it's now the next morning. Frasier is in the kitchen, and he's cooking breakfast for the kids. And Lynn walks in, and the energy kind of changes. Things get awkward between Frasier and Lynn, and Jody kind of picks up on it, and she's like, what's going on? They're like, nothing's going on. And he kind of shoos Jody and Johnny out of the room. And then Frasier takes the opportunity to kind of connect with Lynn. So he, tries to confront her, and, she's resistant. She's like, there's nothing to talk about. Oh my gosh, I don't want to talk to you anyways. And Frasier kind of assures her, hey, I'm a professional. I have lots of experience dealing with adolescents as well as issues regarding sexuality. And then that's when Lynn is just completely mortified. She's like, oh my God, this is not happening. I am not getting outed by my uncle. Somebody kill me. And Frasier kind of pushes her hey, you should probably open up, right? If you don't want to open up to me, maybe you should open up to your dad. We're both paid professionals, right? We get paid to listen to people and to understand. And that's when Lynn gets really defensive, and she kind of states that she doesn't really understand what she's feeling or what she's going through, which is really common for just teenagers, like in general, but especially people like grappling with their own sexual identity, right? So Len just kind of explains, like, I don't know what I'm feeling, and I don't want to talk about what I'm feeling, and I especially don't want to talk about that with you, because you're probably only wanting to talk to me so you can get material for your book, right? And that's when Frasier kind of checks in, and he's like, you know, do you think that's what's happening here? And she explains, you know, it's just so hard to communicate to my parents because my mom's always yelling at me. My dad's always trying to psychoanalyze me, and I don't need this from you either. And that's actually a common experience for people who have family members who are in those kind of professions. You know, they are always feeling like, oh, I'm under a microscope, or you're not really connecting to me as a person. You're just seeing me through the lens of your job.
Particular case focusing on the field that Niles and Frasier Crane are both in, having their expertise, it is something that does shed a light on that reality for people. I mean, for people who are in those households, who kids growing up who are like have parents who have all the answers on why they're going through what they're going through at their age, and it's a conflict. It's like they have the answers, but there's still an internal conflict there. It's like you could literally be born in a household with people who have answers on internal dilemmas that we may or may not experience as individuals since our youth and then growing into our adulthood, and then still not being able to have the answers readily available. It's something that I believe that a lot of people can indeed relate to because of the fact that it has happened so frequently.
And that's what we were really, really trying to kind of outline just in this really quick, fast, small little scene. We really wanted it to have a lot of substance behind the dialogue and what she was saying, because that is a common experience for a lot of people. So Frasier just at this point, Frasier just kind of point blank like asks Lynn, like, you know, do your parents know? And she's like, you know what, I don't even know, so I don't want to talk about it, and I don't want to label anything until I kind of figure out what's going on with me. So, you know, she just basically begs Frasier to keep quiet and just kind of forget about it, especially to her parents. She's like, oh, I don't want anyone to know, not only for my sake, but for, you know, her sake, the girl she was with. Right. So Frasier, you know, takes this as an opportunity to bond with Lynn, and he's like, fine, you know what? I will keep your secret for you. You can trust me, but we just have to make one deal. You just have to cut me some slack, and you gotta treat your parents a little better, right? Stop being so bitchy, essentially. Like, basically, yeah, just like kind of lay off me and lay off your fam, right? And then that's where she's like, okay, but Jody's fair game.
Deal.
And then they agree, you know, they shake hands, and then Lynn walks away. And then there's this really sweet moment where she walks away, but then she kind of rushes back and gives Frasier like an actual hug, like a genuine hug, which pleasantly surprises him. And then they have this kind of like sweet moment where they're like hugging in the kitchen because they bonded now. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Because they're family.
Because they're family, exactly. Right. So they have their nice moment where they're like hugging in the kitchen, and then that's where Jody's like, come on, I'm ready to go, right? So she calls him, she calls Frasier into the living room, and then Johnny is like, can we feed the ducks today? To which Jody kind of gives Frasier the stink eye, and she's like, no, we wouldn't want Uncle Frasier getting any ideas. Frasier asks Lynn, he's like, hey, we're going to go to the park. You know, do you want to go with us? Lynn is like, no, you know, I think I'm actually going to stay here and kind of clean up this mess. Frasier and Lynn kind of smile at each other. They have this kind of like sweet, you know, unspoken moment. And then they leave. Lynn stays back in the kitchen. She starts cleaning up, and then she just kind of like smiles to herself. She's like, yeah, sweet little moment. Okay. So then we do a fade out, and it's now, you know, a few days later, and we're at Frasier's apartment. Niles visits, and he is thanking Frasier for babysitting and just basically states how he feels like a new man after reconnecting with Daphne.
A weekend with a king-size bed, complimentary room service, and no children will do that to you.
You're telling me, Frasier, I stretched muscles I forgot I had. I felt like we were on our honeymoon again.
Niles goes on to thank Frasier again and congratulate him for the obvious influence that he had over the kids.
I don't know what's been going on with Lynn lately, but there's a world of difference between her and Daphne. Did you say something to her?
Oh, no.
Well, whatever the case may be, I'm just so happy that the two of them are finally getting along. Who knows, maybe she's got this whole rebellious phase licked.
So that was just us being a little cheeky, so to speak. Frasier shoos Niles away and explains, you know, I have to go. I have a big important meeting with Roz coming up. To which Niles is like, oh my gosh, yeah, you know, what are you going to do about that whole situation?
You know, Niles, upon further reflection, I now realize the weight one must carry to keep the ship afloat.
Whatever. So now they are back in Roz's office. She comes in all power suit. She sits behind, you know, her desk. She looks at Frasier with those dagger eyes, and she's like, so, have you landed on a decision per our last meeting? To which Frasier gives Roz this really sweet and tender, heartfelt apology. He goes on to explain how he now actually understands her position, and he does indeed have a lot to learn. And hopefully she's the woman who he can learn from. So Roz is so touched. She has this really beautiful moment where she's like, oh, Frasier, welcome aboard. And then they hug, and there's just this really sweet, you know, teary-eyed moment between the two of them. So this next segment coming up was actually really important to me because it had a lot of personal details and experiences that I went through that I kind of sprinkled in to this segment. So, you know, they always say, like, write what you know, and it's true. I believe that the best writers are the ones who take from their own experience and just redress it and present it in a different way. And that's what makes things so authentic and so beautiful, is that people are able to do that. And you can always tell, like, a genuine moment between a bullshit moment. And I really, really tried to make this a genuine moment, and pulling from my own experience was how I did that. So the reason that we had Lynn be a cellist is because I played cello when I was younger. And the reason we chose Green Sleeves as the song was because my great-grandmother really, really loved that song. And when she passed away, Adam, out of the kindness of his heart, did a rendition of that song for her to honor her memory. So that those were both like two really beautiful experiences for me. So I thought, oh wow, what a way to merge those two experiences together into a story in a way that would unify a family, which is what happens here. That was a good way just to kind of tie everything together, because I played cello when I was younger, and that, you know, character in Wings played cello as well. So we thought, hey, this was a really good way to connect those two. And then when my great grandmother passed, we wrote the song Greensleeves. We did her cover of it for her, and yeah, so here we are. Cool. So Daphne and Niles are at home, and they are doing the dishes together in the kitchen, just silently doing their thing. And we wrote this really sweet moment that is going to be guided through the music. So they're doing the dishes, and then suddenly they hear this, and they kind of pop their heads out of the kitchen and start walking towards the sound of the music. Jody and Johnny, each one are in their own spaces, and then they have the same reaction. They notice the music, and then they start following the sound of the music. While the music plays, we're going to cut back to the TV station where Frasier is preparing to go on air. There's like a lot of hustle and bustle around him. He's getting his makeup on. Everyone's, camera one, all that fun stuff. We then cut back to Niles and his home. We then cut back to the Niles home, and we now see that Lynn is the one who's playing the music. And she's playing the music, and her family is standing behind her, unbeknownst to her. And they're just watching her in admiration. And then there's this really beautiful moment where Niles and Daphne, they kind of look at each other, they smile, they rest their heads on one another, put their arms around each other. And it's just this really sweet, tender, like heartwarming moment where they have a tear fall down their eyes because they're seeing their daughter rekindle her talents. You know what I mean? And it's this beautiful moment to witness. And as the song fades out, we cut back to the TV station, and we see Roz standing on the side. She's all excited for Frasier. We see the crewmen counting down the 5, 4, 3, 2, and...
Good morning, Seattle. My name is Dr. Frasier Crane, and I'm listening.
So, of course, we did the tossed salad and scrambled eggs, and here we have a video of Jody and Frasier, but we wanted it to be, like, from the viewpoint of, like, TikTok or, like, a social media app with, like, the hearts and everything over it. And Jody and Frasier are, like, doing their little dance, and Jody is not getting her steps right, and then Frasier, like, stops and yells at her and starts snapping at her and, like, makes her redo the dance. And it's just this funny, like, 1, 2, 3 kind of moment that's playing. So that was it. Thank you guys so much for watching. We really, really, really want your feedback. So please, if you can take the time, drop a comment below or visit our blog or one of our social media sites and let us know, what did you think? Did we deserve to get ghosted? Should we have been hired? Were they totally wrong, or were they totally justified in ghosting us? Let us know. Thanks for watching. Peace, love, and punk, y'all.